It all started on a cold morning when my life suddenly changed. My name is Emma. I'm 35 years old, married to Jason, and work as a freelance graphic designer. We live in a small but cozy apartment in the suburbs. Life wasn't fancy, but it was peaceful, until I got a phone call that turned everything upside down. "Hello, Emma. This is Mr. Wallace," a serious voice said on the other end. "I'm sorry to inform you that your uncle, Henry Whitmore, has passed away." My heart sank. Uncle Henry was a distant figure in my life. He was my mother's estranged brother, and I had only met him a couple of times as a child. "I'm sorry to hear that," I replied awkwardly. But Mr. Wallace continued, "There's something else you need to know. You've been named the primary heir to his estate." I gripped the phone tightly. "What?" I asked in shock. "That doesn't make sense. I barely knew him." "I understand this might be unexpected, but it's true," he explained. "You've inherited his mansion and other assets. You should come to the property soon." When I told Jason the news, he looked thrilled. "A mansion? Emma, this could be a game changer for us." I couldn't share his excitement. Something felt off. Why would a man I hardly knew leave everything to me? 2 days later, Jason and I arrived at Whitmore Manor. The house was enormous, surrounded by tall trees that made it feel isolated. The lawyer, Mr. Wallace, welcomed us at the door. "This is your home now," he said, handing me a set of keys. "But there are conditions." "What kind of conditions?" I asked, confused. "You must live here for 1 year before the property officially becomes yours. If you leave, the inheritance will go to the secondary heir." "And who is that?" Jason asked. "Your cousin Victoria," Mr. Wallace replied. "She isn't happy about the will." I didn't even know I had a cousin named Victoria, but the mention of her made me uneasy. That night, we decided to sleep in one of the smaller bedrooms. The house was quiet, but the silence was unsettling. Every creak and groan felt deliberate, like someone was walking nearby. Jason dismissed my fears. "You're overthinking, Emma. This house is a blessing," he said with a reassuring smile. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. When I finally fell asleep, I dreamt of Uncle Henry. He looked pale, his eyes wide with fear, as if he was trying to warn me. The next day, we explored the house. Each room was filled with old furniture, paintings, and photos. One photo caught my attention. It showed Uncle Henry standing with a young woman, who I assumed was Victoria, in front of a locked door. "Where is this door?" I asked Jason, showing him the picture. "I'm not sure, but we can find it," he replied eagerly. After hours of searching, we discovered the door in a hidden hallway behind the library. It was made of heavy wood and had an intricate lock. I searched through the keys Mr. Wallace gave me and found one that fit. When the door opened, it revealed a staircase leading down into darkness. The air grew colder as we went down the stairs. At the bottom, we found a small basement filled with old boxes and dusty furniture. In the center of the room was a large, carved chest. "This looks ancient," Jason said, running his hand over it. "Should we open it?" "I don't think we should," I said, feeling uneasy. But Jason had already lifted the lid. Inside were letters, documents, and a journal. Jason picked up the journal and began to read. "This is Uncle Henry's handwriting," he said. The journal detailed strange rituals, symbols, and something about sacrifices. My stomach turned as Jason read aloud. "Stop," I said, grabbing the journal. "This is dangerous." Jason sighed but didn't argue. We locked the chest and went back upstairs, but the unease lingered. That night, I dreamt of Uncle Henry again. He was in the basement, pointing at the chest, his lips moving silently. Strange things began happening over the next few days. Lights flickered, doors creaked open, and I constantly felt like I was being watched. Jason tried to brush it off, but even he seemed uneasy. One evening, while Jason was out, I called Mr. Wallace. "What can you tell me about the house?" I asked. There was a long pause before he replied, "Some things are better left alone, Emma. Don't dig too deep." Frustrated, I hung up and started researching Uncle Henry online. What I found was chilling. His name was connected to several disappearances, and there were rumors of dark rituals taking place at the manor. That night, Jason and I argued. "We need to leave," I said. "This place isn't safe." "Emma, you're overreacting," Jason replied. "We can't just walk away from this." "It's not worth our safety," I insisted. Neither of us backed down. Jason went to bed, but I stayed awake, feeling more certain than ever that we needed to leave. The next morning, I woke up to find Jason missing. His phone was on the nightstand, and his car was still outside. Panic set in as I searched the house. When I reached the basement, the chest was open, and Jason's watch was on the floor. I grabbed the journal and flipped through it desperately. One line stood out. "The house demands a keeper. Without one, it will consume all who enter." Tears streamed down my face. The house wasn't just haunted, it was alive, and it had taken Jason. I left the house that day, never looking back. Weeks later, I got a call from Victoria. "You should have stayed," she said coldly. "The house always gets what it wants." And with that, she hung up, leaving me to wonder if I had truly escaped or if the nightmare was just beginning. But the nightmare wasn't over. Weeks later, strange things started happening in our small apartment. I would wake up to faint noises like whispers, even though I was alone. Objects would move from their usual places, and I felt an overwhelming sense of being watched. One evening, while sorting through old belongings, I found Jason's notebook. Flipping through its pages, I found sketches of symbols, similar to the ones in Uncle Henry's journal. Had Jason known more than he let on? Had he been keeping secrets? Desperate for answers, I reached out to Mr. Wallace again. "Mr. Wallace, I'm still being haunted by this house. What's going on?" His voice was cold this time. "Emma, you were chosen for a reason. The house doesn't let go of its keepers easily." "What does that mean?" I demanded, but he hung up. I felt a shiver run down my spine. The house had reached out beyond its walls, and it wanted me back. Determined to put an end to this, I drove back to Whitmore Manor. The house loomed in the distance as if it had been waiting for my return. Stepping inside, I was hit by a wave of cold air. The chest in the basement called to me, and I knew I had to confront whatever was inside. When I opened it, I found a new note, written in Jason's handwriting. "I'm still here." My hands trembled as I realized the house hadn't consumed Jason completely. He was trapped, somewhere within its dark, twisted grasp. I screamed into the empty house, "What do you want?" My voice echoed, and then I heard it. A faint reply, Jason's voice calling my name from the walls. In the days that followed, I made the decision to fight back. I researched the rituals in Uncle Henry's journal, hoping to find a way to free Jason and break the house's curse. The final entry in the journal read, "To release the keeper, one must sacrifice what they love most." Tears filled my eyes as I realized the choice I had to make, but I couldn't abandon Jason, not after everything we had been through. Gathering the courage, I prepared the ritual. The house seemed to come alive, its walls pulsing and creaking as I lit the candles and recited the incantation. Shadows danced around me, and the air grew heavy with tension. When the ritual ended, the house fell silent. Jason appeared before me, his face pale but alive. I ran to him, tears streaming down my face, but he stopped me. "Emma, it's not over," he said. "The house will always want more." We left Whitmore Manor that night, but the memories lingered. Jason and I vowed never to speak of it again, but deep down, I knew the house wasn't finished with us. The question wasn't if it would return, but when.